Hi, friends. Welcome. My name's Ethan Sawyer. My pronouns are he, his, him. I'm the college essay guy, if we've never met before. I'm joined by a very special guest today, Shantel Goodman-Luckett. Hi, Chantal. How are you today?
Hi, hello.
I'm so glad you're here and so glad to get to know you a little bit and feel really honored that you're taking some time to share your wisdom with us. So thanks for being here.
No problem.
So y'all can expect on this session, we're going to be talking about what's now in college admission and a little bit of what's next. But a lot of it's going to be about what's now, reflecting on what are some of the shifts, the changes that have happened based on going through, and some would say still being in a pandemic. We're going to talk about how students can set themselves up for a great college admission process, how counselors and parents can support students through this process. We're going to talk to y'all about a really cool organization that Chantal works for that I'm a super fan of called NACAC. We'll explain what that means in a minute. There's some great resources that NACAC provides to students, parents, and counselors. And then we're going to do Q&A. Y'all have already sent in some questions. We're super grateful for that. And we're also recording this as a podcast, fun fact. So this is, yes, a webinar, but this will live forever on the internets. So again,
That's scary.
Yeah, I know, right? I got interviewed by the BBC. This sounds like a brag. It is a little bit, and before she handed me the mic, she said, "So this goes out to 1 billion people worldwide, just so you know." And then she's like, asked me a question. I was like, "Oh, what?"
Right.
We're just gonna forget that for a minute. But anyway, Chantal, again, thank you for being here. I'd love to just start off with just have you share just a little bit of context to how you ended up in higher ed in the first place, how you ended up working at NACAC.
Yeah, sure. So I joined NACAC in February of 2021. Prior to joining NACAC, I was with another association, a business travel association, for some years, based out of Virginia. And I was the global marketing senior VP of global marketing and also research. And before that, I had some experience still in marketing, digital marketing, but with the Marriott International, with the Courtyard brand. And then where I got my career start, and I like to say I grew up there, was at the Washington Post. So I was in sales and marketing for the Post on the print side for about 5 years, but then I crossed the river and went over to the internet side for about 8. So, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and like a lot of people, I was casually just looking to see what was out there.
Right.
And I saw this role for a chief experience officer, and they were looking for a lot of the experience that I already had in terms of, marketing and membership and, working with government relations within an association, professional development and things like that. And they were just looking for somebody to come in and sort of help pull it all together in an effort to inspire and empower the members. And it's funny because typically when you apply for a job, at least for me, the most daunting task, the task that I hate the most is the cover letter. I probably wrote that in one take. I mean, I was so excited about it. And also my daughter at the time had just started her freshman year in college.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know a little bit something, I'm not a college admissions person, but I do know something about this. So I applied and met with Angel and others at the organization and got the job. So that's how I ended up there.
Awesome. And, for those folks who don't know, NACAC is an organization it's a higher education nonprofit that empowers, I'm going to read the exact verbs from this, empowers college admission and counseling professionals through education, advocacy, and community. And I'd just love to hear a little bit about what is a day in the life of a CXO, a chief experience officer, look like? What are some of the things that you're working on? What are some of the problems that you're solving?
Yeah. So when I came on board, our CEO, Dr. Angel Perez, he says, there's few members that I think would be great for you to talk to, to get their perspective about NACAC and understand why it is that they're members of NACAC, but also like where NACAC can improve. And I think the most common response was, in terms of what they loved, was the networking. NACAC is a professional home to over 26,000 college admission counseling professionals. But I felt like that inspiration piece was missing, and helping to giving them access to even more resources. And allowing those conversations or enabling those conversations around admissions to take place, and also finding better ways to connect students with college admissions professionals. So I'm all over the organization. You said, what's a day in a life? So, I oversee membership experience, events and meetings. So that includes our annual conference, the college fairs, guiding the way to inclusion, the logistics around all of those things. Also marketing and some sponsorship as well. So, I'm working closely with, David Hawkins, who heads up our education and policy efforts. And, like I said, I'm working with everybody across the organization.
Yeah, thank you. And we've got we ran a quick poll about who's on the call. We got 40% counselors, 30% parents, 25% students.
Oh, wow.
So a nice mix today. Yeah. And I know that you just went through this process not too long ago with your own daughter. I'd love to just talk to parents for a second. What advice, in terms of like either resources that you made use of or things that you didn't necessarily find out that you had to figure out, and what advice would you give to parents as they go through this process? Yeah.
When I went through this process with my daughter, she's a rising senior. So she's starting junior at Spelman College. It was stressful. I'm just going to say It was very stressful, as I know it is for a lot of folks who are joining the webinar today. She was lucky and privileged. She went to a private school in Northern Virginia. She had access to a counselor that said, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is what you need to do. But it's still stressful. Still stressful. I think for her being a student, it's wanting to meet everybody's expectations, right? And I think for a parent, it's wanting to meet everybody's expectations. Quite frankly.
I'm curious, how did you manage that?
I actually had some come to Jesus conversations with her counselor, because it was tough, because here's the thing. You're focused on college admissions, right? So there's all the pressures around that. You're trying to, selecting your schools and all of that, and filling out the FAFSA and everything that you're doing. But then you're also a teenager.
Right.
You're also a teenager. My daughter was very active in sports and student government and all that kind of stuff. And, there's also the social piece. I always say, like, social media is a blessing and it's also a curse.
Right.
Because with that comes, I didn't get invited to that party. And, and as a parent, you're just like, that stuff isn't important. You're trying to go to college. But, I think first and foremost, my advice to students out there is to breathe, just to stop and just to breathe. It is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I wish that we could normalize the phrase or the point of view. I wish it was more of, I'm going to go to the school that is the best fit for me.
Right.
Period. Because that's really what it is. That's what it should be. And the same thing with the parents, right? Obviously, be supportive. Try not to pressure your student. Just be there for them. Be a sounding board. Celebrate the milestones, I would say. Yeah. So when you fill out the FAFSA, when you make the decision on the schools that the student wants to apply to, if the student gets accepted, like, celebrate those things.
How did y'all celebrate? Did you have any little things that y'all did?
We didn't do anything in particular. It was just, for me, I'm texting my family. I'm like, Indy just completed her financial aid, form, and, fingers crossed emoji, fingers crossed. Or, even the schools that were not the reach schools, it's like if she received an acceptance, it's a big deal,
Right.
It's a really
Right.
big deal. And I will say this too, and this is for the students who are listening. The process, the decisions, the outcomes of the college admission process, it is not a reflection of your self-worth.
Right.
And you need to remember that. It is not. So much goes into whether or not a school will accept a student and that sort of thing. But one thing that I realized after I got to NACAC that I did not know was just how many schools there are, how many great institutions there are. And I know that because I've met so many of the members that work for those institutions. I've attended the NACAC college fairs, and I'm like, good Lord, like I didn't know, because I think in the media, you hear a lot about those highly selective schools. And that's what's in our students' heads, is that's where I have to, in order to be not accepted, but in order to feel special or like I've accomplished something, I've got to go to one of those schools. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. It is about take a breather. It is about you. It is about what is the best school when you look at the academics, when you look at the social aspect of it, and also the finance is a big piece. And I think for the parents and the students who are listening or who are on today, you guys need to sit down, because my daughter and I, we had to do this and talk about the finances and set some expectations, and just so that you all know what you're working with, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's so
Hope that helps.
That last part about having the money conversation, what I find sometimes is that families will delay having that conversation, or they'll put it off, or they'll think we'll get in and then we'll figure out money.
Yes.
And y'all, I just want to say that if you can have that conversation earlier, and I'm going to throw a resource into the chat here, and it'll be on the show notes for those who are listening as the podcast, that we have this resource on paying for college that will walk you through how to think about money for college.
Yeah.
And then if anybody's hearing what Chantel is saying and feeling overwhelmed by the number of schools that are out there, I'm going to throw in one more guide here to the chat and the show notes, which is a guide to how do you figure out what you're looking for when it comes to all the colleges out there. And then how do you find what are the schools that fit with some of the things you're looking for. So I'm going to be kind of whispering, interspersing some of these like little resources for some of the things you're talking about, Chantel. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So I'd love to hear from your perspective, as a parent, but also, as in your role at the organization, what have you seen? What impact has COVID-19 had on college admission, on sort of the field? What have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most prevalent is test optional, right? I mean, that movement is, I think there were probably about 1,000 or so schools that were offering test optional or test flexible pre-COVID. And then I think COVID accelerated that because of the limited opportunities to test. Yeah. It seems like that's going to end up becoming the new norm, I think. And then in terms of the way that that's impacted the institutions, I think the highly selective institutions saw or are seeing more like an increase in applications. But I think your community colleges and your locally, like your regional institutions, they are not so much. I think they're the ones kind of hurting as a result of the test optionals, because folks are like, wow, I have a shot, and the perception was that the tests is what was keeping them from being accepted into those highly selective institutions. I would say, I think that's probably the biggest trend that we're seeing.
We see. Yeah, I'm so with you on this. That's one thing that students, I think, sometimes don't know, is that in terms of the average acceptance rate, it's something like 60. NACAC put out a thing on this not too, over the years, but it's between 60 and 70%. It's like the average acceptance rate, right?
Yeah.
And yet, what we see the focus on is that those highly selectives, because now X school is down to 3% or they're down to 4%. But what you're saying is so true, that there are those schools that, yeah, they're shrinking, but other schools are like, we need you.
Yes.
And we will give you money.
Yes. And we'll give you, that's the thing. And we'll give you money, and we'll give you money. Yes, exactly.
So seed planted. I'm just going to water it and say, y'all, there are schools out there that want you. If you broaden your view on what, the right school is, if you don't go Stanford or bust, how you define success in the process is sort of like, if I get into this highly selective or not.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is just if I could offer a little bit more
Please.
advice when your students are applying to school, stay true to who you are, and don't try to change or who you are just to get into a school, because that eventually will catch up with you. And the other thing that I say this to colleagues who are, looking for a job, and I'll say this to students, is to go where you are celebrated, not tolerated. And there are plenty of schools out there that would celebrate you if you were to become a student at their institution. So, yeah.
One of the things you mentioned earlier about some of the shifts happening, or you mentioned college fairs earlier. And one of the things I noticed is like a lot of the college fairs had to be virtual, for a couple of years, but those college fairs are coming back, aren't they?
They are. I'm so excited. Yeah. So 2020, completely virtual. And then 2021 virtual, started to make a comeback in spring of 2022. We had 6 in person. We were getting our feet wet, and 7 virtual. We're also going through a redesign project with our college fairs. We're looking to redesign or reimagine what that experience looks like for the institutions that participate, and also the students and parents. So we're hoping we're wrapping that up. Cool. And I think folks will start to see that sprinkled in a little bit this fall. We have 17 in-person fairs this fall, and we have 3 virtual. So we're cutting back on the virtual, but we're going to always have virtual, because that gives students access, to the fairs. So, and my guess is we'll be announcing the spring 2023 schedule before conference. So I think we'll see even more in-person fairs in the spring.
Yeah. College fairs can be overwhelming. First of all, to students who haven't heard of, like, what is a college fair, haven't been to one, it's basically you walk in and imagine these college admission officers, who are folks that you think you may never meet because you're just going to be sending in these applications. They actually all gather in one place, and you can go and meet them and ask them questions about their institution. So one thing, as a probably introvert, that I'll say is, like, it can feel overwhelming, but if you can sort of target specific questions at those college fairs and have specific schools that you're interested in talking to, and I'd say pick 2 or 3, but then also to your point, Chantal, there are those schools who you may not have heard of that could be, those wild cards that, could have what you're looking for. I want to just give a little bit of advice and say, if y'all do end up going to one of these NACAC college fairs, and I helped organize the Pasadena one for 5-6 years, and they're a trip. I'd say y'all, like, to students specifically, like, speak to those reps who don't have that long line of folks, go up and just ask them, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your institution? Or I'm looking for X particular thing. Can you tell me about that at your school?
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome advice. And in the spring, we partnered with Go to College Fairs, and we started using their matchmaking platform and our matchmaking technology, I should say. And with that, colleges are able to, they create their accounts in the platform, and basically just, we are a 4-year institution, or we're a 2-year institution, we're in the city, or we're in the suburbs, that kind of thing. And they select different attributes. On the student side, you're able to use the same platform, and you can say, I'm looking for a 2-year institution that offers this, that is, in the Midwest, that, and what'll happen is you will get an email that says, here are the 4 to 5 schools that best meet your qualifications or your attributes that you're looking for. And that's pretty cool, because it's like, you should definitely talk to these schools. Doesn't mean they're the only ones you should talk to, but I think that at least gets you started. And like I said, it'll give you about 4 to 5 schools that rise to the top based on your search.
I love that. I love that, because it can be, just to say to y'all, it can be overwhelming when you're like looking at all the schools, but between resources like this, where you're actually meeting face to face with somebody in this sort of, more contained way, or, through online resources and stuff, it can narrow the field for y'all, because it can be a lot at the start.
Yeah.
I want to, Chantal, give one of the questions that came in via email. Rebecca asked, what would you say to students who believe the college admission process makes them feel the need to achieve everything? You kind of addressed this, but I want to see if you have anything else to say. Know everything about themselves and have their life figured out before submitting their college applications.
I would say that I am twice the age of your students, and I don't have it all figured out either. Again, I think I go back to my earlier comment. It's okay. You're not going to know everything. If you do, that's great. I applaud you. You are a unicorn. If you know everything about this process. It is a wild ride, but it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Take your time, and I would make it memorable instead of, it's funny to talk to my daughter now. She's like, oh my God, that was so stressful, but I know that I played a part in that because I was stressed for her. Right. But again, I would just take your time and, encourage your student to sit down, create their goals, think about, what it is that is, again, good for them. It's not about the neighbor's son or your coworker's daughter, and because everybody is competing or just feels like they have to keep up with the Joneses and, well, wait, they got that. How come we didn't get that? And all of that sort of thing. So just put your student at the center of this process, because that is who this is for. And, I think that will help, and just block out all the noise. And again, just don't forget to, celebrate the successes, go to college fairs together if you can do that. If you attend the virtual fairs, sit down and do that together. Make it a family, exercise or event that you do. It's very interesting. I noticed at the fairs, there's some families. You've got the baby in the stroller, like everybody is there. And it's like a field trip for the whole family. And I love to see it. But make it special. It is special. And the time goes by so quickly. Believe me, as somebody with a college junior, it is, you just want to hold on, to some of those really key milestones, and create memories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to share some resources with folks, and I want to hear from you, Chantel. What are some of your favorite resources that NACAC, and it could be for parents and students, but I'd also love to hear some of your favorite resources for counselors. I'm going to share my screen here for just a minute.
Yeah.
If I may. We put together this list of resources during the pandemic, and these were particular to, thinking about, how do you apply to college essentially when things are still up in the air. So NACAC put together this called College Admission Status Update tool, and it's basically a searchable tool that you can use to go in and find out, how are the campuses taking care of safety, these kinds of things. You'll also see on this doc, and we'll share this link, of course, in the show notes, how to research colleges without visiting a campus. So Chantal, you mentioned access. If you're not able to go to one of these college fairs, or it's not offered in your area, and by the way, someone asked in the chat, are they free? Yeah, all the fairs are free. But if you're not able to go to one of these and you want to just, visit and, virtually, as it were, there are some resources in there about that. And then there's a big spreadsheet that has a lot of virtual college admission events. And then Chantal also mentioned that the test optional schools, and we have a big list of what all those schools are, so you can find out what that is. I'd love to hear you add on to this, Chantal. Are there other resources that you want to point folks to, either students, parents, or counselors?
Yeah, sure. For everyone, definitely the fairs. So check those out. And then NACAC puts out a guide to college admission process. So that is actually being updated, and it's going to be re-released in mid-September. So that is a resource that is that will be available to everyone. And then also there is I think this one is probably underrated. And part of this though is NACAC pushing this information out. I think we're starting to do a better job. We're redesigning our website, which is I'm so happy about. And with the new website, with the redesign, we will have, like, if you're a counselor, you click here. If you are a student or parent, you click here. And there you'll find information on college fairs and some other resources. But there's a step-by-step college awareness and planning. So that guide is available as well. And what I love about that one is it goes from like kindergarten through, high school. It's got curriculum in there, and counselors can actually sit down with students. There's exercises and worksheets and things like that around the planning for college. NACAC for counselors, for our members, we also have the journal, which highlights some really highlights a lot of that is insights, and also we highlight the NACAC members as well in that. And then we've got the biweekly bulletin that we put out. There's also Today in College Admission that comes out on Tuesdays. And then, we also, it's in its 35th year. It's called College Openings Update. And I don't know if folks are familiar with that one, but that is basically a list. Usually comes out after the May 1st national, the deadline, where everyone finds out if they've been accepted. And we've released that early for the past 2 years because of the high demand. And what College Openings Update is, it's a list of all of the colleges and universities that are still accepting applications. Mm-hmm. So that is a big one. And I think we had over 400 schools participate this year.
What you just said, I want to say it because there's somebody on this webinar right now that's going to be like, wait, what did they say? I want to say to you, I want to fast forward to May or June. Let's say you didn't get into the schools that you wanted to, and you're thinking, I don't have options. First of all, spend some time on the first resource we shared, developing a great college list. And if you get a balanced list, you will have options. But if you end up in a jam, NACAC has got you. So just to say it again, there's this big list of schools that are still accepting students. We mentioned earlier that, some schools are like, sorry, the inn is full. And other schools are like, hey, we would love to have you. Yeah. So there's this big list of schools, and it's published, like you said, right in May and June, that it's on the NACAC website. And you can literally Google schools still accepting applications, NACAC, and you'll probably find that resource, but we'll also share it in the show notes.
Yeah. Yep. And that's for everybody, and it's free. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I'm interested in hearing about a little bit more, something that we talked about as we were kind of preparing for this. You talked about advocacy, and in particular in terms of the conference coming up. So just so that y'all know, every year NACAC has this conference. It's the biggest of its kind, college admission professionals. For students, I don't know how interesting this is to you, but like 6,000 admissions folks get together and we nerd out on college stuff. But you mentioned, one of the things you said to me, it was really interesting. You said advocacy is no longer taking a back seat at the conference. Will you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the conference this year, we are how many days? 42 days away. The conference is going to be held in Houston, September 22nd through the 24th. And we had heard from some very vocal members who were disappointed that just after, legislation in the state of Texas around abortion rights and, LGBTQ community, that legislation that affects those groups, folks were like, how could you still go to Texas? And a handful they were very vocal with us, and they said, we're disappointed. Our feeling is that we have members all over the world, and they're in Texas, they're in Houston, and the students that they serve, that we're trying to connect them to, are also in Houston, they're in Texas. So our stance is that we are standing with our members. Now, what I do feel that we should do, Angel agrees, and the leadership team, the board, it's like the question came up, like, how do we redirect frustration? How do we help people? How do we help folks in the community and our members who are impacted by the legislation? And we can do that through advocacy. And I think it's interesting because I, have spoken to numerous folks in the association space who are struggling with the same thing. Mm-hmm. It can't be a personal decision, although I'll tell you it's hard, right? Mm-hmm. You can't make your decisions based on how you feel personally, because it's not about me. It is about the members that we serve. And I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here, I think. And so NACAC, we're going to be talking to members of our board soon to develop like guiding principles around, like, when we decide where a conference is going to be or where an event is going to be, what are those guiding principles? In the past, it was very easy. It was, does this city have the infrastructure to host 6,000 of us, right? What are the food and beverage costs and all of that kind of stuff? Well, now politics have been thrown in there, and human rights and all that sort of thing. So when I was in Houston last week, I went there for a site visit, and it was our final site visit. And we were able to get a meeting with the Houston Independent School District, the superintendent. We were able to get a meeting with him, and also the director of education from the mayor's office, Sylvester Turner's office, because we wanted to find out what issues they are dealing with. And through advocacy, we want to get the school counselors to our conference. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is they can't get out of school. They can't get out of it, right? So we have a couple of universities that are like, look, we'll sponsor scholarships to help get the school counselors in Houston to the conference. And that's what we shared with the superintendent. And I said to him, but I need your help. They need permission to get out of school. And can you help us with that? And so he was so gracious, and so was the director of education. It was a great conversation. And we're hoping that we've got some things to just kind of work through, and I's to dot and T's to cross. But Houston is a very interesting situation, right? But we're hoping, we're hoping to use this as a test case, right? We're hoping to pilot something very different than what we've done in the past. I just actually had a conversation today with members of the Houston local arrangements committee for the conference. Mm-hmm. And the community service liaisons, like they are all over it. They're like, okay, here are all the organizations that our attendees can help support while they're in Houston. And for those attendees who are going to attend virtually, it's going to be fantastic. Like there's a lot of details that we're working through and finalizing. But back to your original question with advocacy, it's no longer taking a back seat. It is at the forefront because of the political landscape that we are faced with right now.
Right.
So.
Right. Yes. Thank you. One of the things that I'm really excited about, I just came from the Guiding the Way to Inclusion conference in Philadelphia, and had a beautiful week there. And one of the things I love about this conference is the opportunity to connect with colleagues, see folks that you have seen or only met online. Is there one thing in particular that you're excited about? It could be related to advocacy or just in general. Like, is there one thing you're excited about this year?
I'm excited to welcome school counselors to conference. Like I'm going to be really excited to welcome them. And also we haven't announced this yet, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this because we haven't announced it. But I think for the first time ever, we are going to feature our school counselors on the main stage.
Great.
We have a panel that will be held Friday, the 23rd, that morning, and it's about the resilience of school counselors. So I'm really excited about that. Billy Porter, I'm of course excited about him. He's going to join us on Thursday. But I think just all the really cool activations and conversations that are taking place about how NACAC and attendees of the conference can help give back to the folks in the Houston community. I'm just really excited about that because it is, in terms of the priority list, it is at the top this year. And I don't think we've ever seen that before.
I love that. Yeah. I want to open it up. We got, some time here. I want to open it up for Q&A as folks who are here. Feel free to post questions in the chat. We won't be able to probably get to all of them, but I'll kind of pick and choose here. We've got some behind the scenes that have already come in on the Google Doc, so I'll be picking from those as well. One of the things because I want to make sure that we talked about this, one of the things you said, as if you had to kind of look in the crystal ball and sort of think about where do we see this admission? This is a big, hard question, so feel free to take time to think about this. Is where do we see college admissions headed? One of the things you mentioned, for example, Chantal, is seeing test optional. You think that's here to stay?
I do. I think so, because I don't think that I haven't heard that it has had a negative impact on admissions, with the exception of the college, community colleges and the regional schools. But I think that has more to do with it's COVID, still the impact of COVID. But I do think that is probably here to stay. I think it's the new normal. Yeah.
Rebecca asked, what's one piece of advice you'd give to all students about writing essays for their college application?
That is tough because it's up to the school, right? I would say, honestly, I would say when you write the essay, make sure it is from you. It is your voice. Give yourself time, try not to rush it, but prepare, give yourself time, create an outline. That's how, that was my advice to my daughter. Be very thoughtful, but again, make sure it's your voice. I think it depends. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I saw like the prompt itself in terms of what the school is looking for. I'm just guessing that would give some guidance as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll add to that a little bit. And I'll share a resource as well. There's one of the things I'll say is like to Rebecca and whoever you're with, who's wondering that too. It starts with great brainstorming. And I think sometimes students will become too narrowly thinking about the prompt or what they want. And I want y'all there's some resources that I linked that will get y'all focused on what do you have to bring. Because if you get outwardly focused, and to your point, Chantal, you start thinking about what do they want. And it's kind of like trying to get dressed and make everybody happy with like wearing the perfect shirt. What's going to make you feel really good? And of course, there are other things. Colleges are looking for what are the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring to a college campus. But it starts with great brainstorming and having a few ideas, not just going with the first idea. The resources that I just linked should help. Let's see. I'm going to grab another one here. That one was from before. I already answered that one. What advice do you have for students? Okay, this is interesting. Say students have had an incredibly difficult junior year, and they see their grades drop as a result. I want to give I might feel this one and give like a particular tactical answer, and then maybe you can give the sort of like the life advice, Chantal. One of the things that y'all can do is if there's something that you feel like needs explaining, there's a part of the Common App called the additional information section. And you can express that to them in very specific bullet point terms. And the 3 questions that I would say answer are, what was the challenge that you faced, whatever it was that led to the bad grades? What were the effects? And the effects were probably those bad grades, but there's something that led to that. And then what did you do about it? And actually, that's 4 questions. Challenges and effects. I'm combining those kind of. What did you do about it? And what did you learn? And if you can just bullet point those answers and put that into the additional information section, you don't have to put that in your personal statement. But I'm curious if there's anything. Sorry, Chantal, I kind of like grabbed that one. But
no, I think that's great advice. Yeah, I don't think I would add anything. I think that's great advice.
This is a question comes in from Emma. How do you recommend students, and this could be for parents or for students, they stay on top of the college application process? How can they make it feel less overwhelming?
I think making it like an event, you know, like what are those milestones in terms of completing the application, applying for financial aid, all of those kinds of things, and just mapping it out together so that so that you're not saying, hey, what about, or why don't we work on, and the student is not, it's just they're not in a place where they want to think about that.
Right.
And then I don't know, like after each, I mean, that's where you can establish the milestones, and after each milestone, you know, take the student out to dinner, or I don't know, just do something kind of fun for them, and capture those moments, I would say. I think that's what we did. Yeah.
I love that. I love hearing the celebrating thing, because that seems like a thing that could easily get skipped over. But I love that you're planting that seed early on here, that we can find those moments and find those moments with each other to just go, you know what, this is something worth pausing on. Like you said, even if it's a text, but it could be something as momentous as, like, I don't know, going out for ice cream or something.
Yeah.
I want to share.
I think too, as a parent, like, it's okay for you as a parent to say, like, gosh, this is really stressful. You know what I mean? Or, you know, wow, that was hard, but we did it, but you did it. You know, that wasn't easy. Like, it's okay to say that. And I actually encourage that so that the student doesn't feel like it's just them. You know, if they're feeling anxious or they're feeling, you know, like they're having a difficult time or whatever. I think definitely opening up those lines of communication is really important.
Yeah. I want to share with y'all some more resources, because I'm the resources guy here.
Yeah.
And say that we have this hub. I linked it in the chat, but one of the things you'll find on this hub, which has just a whole bunch of resources. And by the way, if you're an international student, you can click this little link here at the top. It's got resources for you. One of the things you'll find here at the top is a college application and admissions timeline. So when you're asking that question, what should I be doing right now? If you scroll down to whatever grade you're in, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, you'll see a bunch of stuff from NACAC on here. You know, if you're an athlete, for example, if you're, you know, a lot of you all are probably going to be rising seniors, and you'll see it kind of broken down by season. So August and September, 12th grade, you know, what should you be doing? There's a whole bunch of stuff that we've got here in terms of, you know, essentially working on essays, or, you know, right now setting up, you know, starting to think about scholarships, potentially starting to look at financial aid. And then I want to flag something as well. On the counselor side, we have this, a resource hub that we put together that has email templates for students. I just wanted to ping this for y'all, because some of you are familiar with it and some of you may not be. But when it comes to sort of emailing out students resources, and some folks are just like overwhelmed and they're like, I don't have time to write an email. Of course, some of you are like, just like, of course, how would I not? But we've got these email templates that when it comes to, let's say it's August, September, you click one of these, and let's click the one for all 4 grades. And it jumps you into a Google Doc that has specific links that you can share with your students, no matter what grade they're in. And you can just copy and paste this into your, you know, whatever email or missive that you're sending out to students. And this is our answer to how do we help reduce stress. You'll find a lot more on this hub in terms of, like, again, researching schools and figuring out which schools to apply to. Should you apply early and that kind of stuff. So again, we'll follow up with this link so y'all have it. So you don't have to remember all these links, but I just wanted to share some more concrete stuff in answer to that question.
That's great.
I like this one from KGB. Hey, KGB. In our family, we made a rule not to bring the college conversation to the dinner table. It was a no college zone to reduce stress. I like that one. I've heard some folks say limiting it to, you know, we're only going to talk about it on Sundays from, you know, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's our college conversation time.
Yeah, that's kind of like bringing your cell phone, right, to the dinner table. It's like, don't. Yeah.
Anne is asking, you kind of addressed this earlier, but I want to ping it again. Anne is asking, is there a trend of more or fewer students applying to college? What is your sense?
I think folks are applying to college, actually enrolling. I think enrollment is down. But I think the highly selective colleges, like I said earlier, are seeing definitely an uptick in applications, but enrollment is down, especially among first generation students of color, low income students. As a result, I think of a lot of that too is the stress and anxiety has caused that as well.
Kristen asked, what's new or what's next in college applications themselves? And I don't know if you have insight into this, because I mean, your role is, in some sense, you're connected to those, but maybe not as much. But do you have any sense of, will the process be different this year? Or does it seem from your perspective that for the most part, colleges are still, you still got to apply? What's your sense of any differences that you're noticing, that you're tracking?
I don't know. The topic that comes up a lot in at least conversations that I'm having with members is they're saying, they're asking a lot about the test optional. They're very curious about, like, is it going to be the norm? Are schools going to go back to requiring tests, that sort of thing? I feel like that is probably a major topic. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, affordability is a big topic as well. I think, until our state and federal policymakers start to treat, and this is my perspective, start to treat a post-secondary education as a public good, which I believe and NACAC believes that it is, then I think it's always going to be tough, because I mean, I think we all agree that a K through 12 education makes sense and it has its benefits. And we'd love we'd love for our policymakers to feel the same about a post-secondary education. Folks that attain a post-secondary degree, they see higher incomes and healthier lifestyles. Typically, I'm not saying this is all in, but and so does this society, right? Their communities, but they've got to get the same level of support, I think. And it's got to be viewed that way as a public good. So,
what are you noticing in terms of conversations around mental health? KGB asks, what trends are you seeing regarding mental health resources on college campuses? In other words, normalizing that getting help is okay.
I think it is becoming more and more part of the conversation. In the fall of 2021, what year are we in now? NACAC launched 4 ad hoc committees, and one of them was engaging public school counselors. And I was one of the staff liaisons for that. And first or second meeting that we had, we were listing out, the various challenges that school counselors are facing. And mental health was at the top of the list, and they were like, Chantel, it's hard to talk about college admission when you're dealing with mental health in schools. And so at conference, when we talk about resilience among school counselors on the main stage, part of that conversation is going to be around mental health. And I think it is becoming a normal part of the conversation. I mean, you say that and everybody nods. It's not like mental health, like, what do you mean by that? It's not only plaguing students, but it's also, us as adults as well. And a lot of that stems from, well, it was an issue pre-COVID. I think COVID magnified it and made it part of the conversation.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with an admission officer from a large school in the Pacific Northwest on Monday, and I was talking to him specifically about mentioning mental health issues in the application. And I said,
Mm,
what's your sense of that? And he said, we want to know those things. And I said, well, isn't it so common? You know, every student's going to have something. It seems like, I mean, and of course, I say every, but there's certainly
yeah.
by degrees, some people impacted more than others. But he said, we need to know that kind of stuff. One of the resources that we're going to be working on is how counselors can help students advocate for themselves in the additional information section. And for students who aren't aware, there is a particular section in the application besides the additional info that asks, how has COVID impacted you?
Mm,
And as you might guess, there's a resource for that. I'll put it in the chat, but there's a whole guide to if COVID-19 has impacted you positively or negatively. There's a little guide to how to talk about that specifically. And again, I just want to kind of let you know that at least this one admission officer is like, we want to know about it. And that helps to contextualize all that you've been through. Sometimes students, I think, are like nervous that, oh, I didn't do enough activities. And it's like, listen, we've been through a pandemic, and everybody's,
yeah.
activities have been down for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So, colleges want to know, what are those values that you've developed, that you've connected with? How has it impacted your academics? Like that's important context for colleges to have. And you don't have to squish it all into your main personal statement.
Yeah.
You can put it elsewhere.
Yeah. And what's great is that, I talked earlier about, social media being a blessing and being a curse. I mean, there are more and more celebrities and artists who are talking about mental health openly and honestly. And I think it's good for our students to see that it's okay to have those conversations and to talk about it, and also to get help if you need it. So,
Any advice for students scared they won't find their main passion or interest or dream career during undergrad?
Breathe. Just breathe. Yeah. I would advise parents and students to dial it back. It's okay. You probably won't, and that is okay. It is, again, a marathon. It is not a sprint. And put yourself, as I'm talking to the students here and to the parents, put the student at the center of this entire process. It is about them, and what is best for them.
I love that. I mean, that feels like actually a pretty good note to wrap up on, because that feels like some pretty good advice that you could take home. Focus on what you can control.
Yes.
Chantal, I just want to thank you. Thanks for spending this time with me. And
thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry we didn't get to meet at GWI.
That's all right. I'll see you at NACAC. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here, students, parents, counselors. We're going to be sending out all the links as ever with all the resources and all the things. You don't have to hold them into your head. And I appreciate y'all. And we'll see y'all soon in some other webinar, online event. And again, Chantal, thanks so much.
Yeah, if I could just say really quickly to all the students and the parents, I am rooting for you. NACAC is rooting for you. We're all rooting for you, and it's going to be okay. And for any counselors that are on, just thank you for everything that you do and all the work that you do to try to support the students and the families and their, their journey.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful week.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.